first, Shilian had missed him dearly, since they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Even though this long time was nothing more than a few days. Yet who knew that Hua Cheng had always been right by his side, hiding. Suddenly, Shilian's mood brightened, all of his previous worries and anxieties completely forgotten. He was laughing so hard, he was having trouble getting up. "Gogo, you played me," Hua Cheng accused. Shilian picked up the brush and plank and said, "Don't turn this on me. Sanang played me first. Let me guess, you've been around ever since I broke the stove, right?" Hua Cheng complimented. "Ah, that's indeed the case. Gogo, how did you know? You're so amazing." Shilian waved his hand. "What, amazing? Sanlang, if you want to disguise yourself, don't be so lazy. It'd be more amazing if I couldn't tell that there was a second person who could eat." He cleared his throat. "But who's the handsomest? Who's the strongest? Who's the richest? Who do you admire the most?" He laughed. "Gogo, please forget that ever happened," Hua Cheng said softly. Shilian resolutely refused. "No, I will remember this forever," Hua Cheng said woefully. "Gogo, although I'm happy you're so happy, but is it really that funny?" Shilian hugged his belly and said while laughing, "Of course, only after having met you did I rediscover that it's such a simple thing to be happy." Hearing this, Hua Cheng blinked. Shilian's laughter quieted a bit, realizing that what he just said was a little too revealing. Now that he'd calmed down, even he thought it was a little sappy. Clearing his throat softly, Shilian rubbed at the corner of his eyes and forced himself to school his own expression. "All right, enough playing around," he said. "Where's the real Lang Ying? Why are you disguised as him? Bring him back now." Hua Cheng languidly replied, "I've temporarily sent him to the ghost city as a guest." Since it was Hua Cheng who took him away, Shilian wasn't worried at all. He nodded and was about to speak again when the wooden door creaked open. Lingwen walked out from within Puchi Shrine, her hands at her sides. "Your Highness," she said. Hua Cheng had no intention of revealing his identity, so Shilian didn't mention it either, pretending he was still Lang Ying in front of others. Seeing Lingwen's solemn expression, Shilian unconsciously became serious too, his smile completely gone. "What is it?" he asked. "The brocade is something wrong with Bai Jing?" "No, there's nothing wrong with him," Lingwen said. "It's just there seems to be a weird smell coming from the kitchen. Is your Highness cooking something?" Shilian quickly replied, "Oh, I am. I'm cooking." After some thought, Lingwen used a courteous tone to say very discourteously, "Please clean it away, Your Highness. Whatever you're cooking is probably ruined by now." 2 hours later, the evening had come. Inside Puji Shrine, at the altar table, Hua Cheng, Lingwen, and Chuan Yizhen sat around the little wooden table in a circle. Shilian brought out a pot from the kitchen and laid it on the table. The moment he opened the cover, he revealed many snow-white, cute, round, and smooth little meatballs sitting sagely in the pot. "Didn't you stew with water? Why did it turn into meatballs?" Chuan Yizhen demanded. Shilian introduced it thusly. "This dish is called incorruptible chastity meatballs." "Didn't you stew with water? Why did it turn into meatballs?" Chuan Yizhen demanded again. Shilian continued his presentation. Because kneading meatballs requires delicate strength, not too hard, not too light, a lot of time and effort went into this. Didn't you stew with water? Why did it turn into meatballs? Chuan Yijin demanded yet again. Since Chuan Yijin was really too relentless, Shilian explained warmly. I did use water to stew, you're right. But because there was a little problem with controlling the fire and time, the entire pot was boiled dry. So I added new seasonings and made meatballs instead. Hearing this, Ling Wen wholeheartedly praised. Your Highness truly thinks outside the box, incomparable in all of history. The servant is steeped in deep respect. Thank you, thank you. Your praise is too high, Xielin responded. It's not, Ling Wen said. At least, I believe there will definitely not be another in history who can create a dish called incorruptible chastity meatballs. Xielin passed the chopsticks around. Who knows, who knows? Everyone, please, he said. Ling Wen and Chuan Yijin took the chopsticks with their right hand, and their left reached for the cold buns sitting at the edge of the table at the same time. Only Hua Cheng reached for an incorruptible chastity meatball, delivering it to his own mouth. After a moment, he remarked, pretty good. Seeing this, Chuan Yijin's eyes widened. Hua Cheng then added, the flavors a bit light. Okay, duly noted, Xielin said, watching with wide eyes as the boy covered in bandages next to him ate several glowing, smooth like cement meatballs and gave such sincere feedback. Chuan Yijin seemed to be completely persuaded. After some thought, he also reached for a meatball. Xielin maintained his smile. He smiled and watched Chuan Yijin swallow it. He smiled as Chuan Yijin's face turned pale. He smiled as Chuan Yijin fell to the ground, unable to get back up. Xielin continued smiling as he asked, is something the matter? Hua Cheng answered, probably ate too fast and choked. Ling Wen grinned. Just then, Xielin heard a familiar voice ring in his ear. Gurgur. It wasn't the mumbling voice of Lang Ying, and it wasn't the crisp and lazy voice of boy Hua Cheng, but it was the voice of the usual Hua Cheng. He was speaking to Xielin through their private communication array. Xielin raised his lashes slightly and responded, what is it? Ling Wen is someone cruel and cunning, heartless and merciless, Hua Cheng replied. Now that you've brought her back, things might not end so easily. This was the first time Xielin had ever heard anyone make such comments about Ling Wen. After some pondering, he replied, it seems to me she harbors some goodwill toward that brocade immortal. That shouldn't be false. Harboring goodwill and being merciless don't conflict. She's the #1 civil guard in the heavens. Her eyes and ears are everywhere, and her arms are far-reaching. Gurgur needs to guard against her, looking for helpers, Hua Cheng said. General Pei, Xielin asked. It shouldn't be him, Hua Cheng replied. If the water tyrant was still around, then she would definitely ask for his assistance to suppress the matter, as Shawudu always aids based on acquaintance and not reason. But if it was Pei Ming, as long as you tell him the truth of everything, he might not choose to aid corruption. Gurgur, be careful. All right, I will be careful, Xielin said. Good thing a day goes by fast. However, Hua Cheng's voice in his ear was dark. No, Gurgur, you've misunderstood. I'm telling you to be careful of something else. someone's here. Just then, a series of clinking, crisp sounds of bells entered Shelian's ears. Hua Cheng frowned slightly. Shelian looked through the cracks of the window and saw a middle-aged cultivator with a bell in his hand, swaying as he approached the entrance to Puchi village. The cultivator was wearing a luxurious cultivation robe. A treasure chest was carried on his back, and the chest was covered with yellow charms. That bell rang as he walked. Shelian had an eye for these things and recognized that it was a good tool. If there were any normal monsters and demons about, their heads would throb when they heard the sound of that bell, and they would steer clear. Before the cultivator got closer, a few other large, white-browed and yellow-robed monks joined him with staffs in their hands. Soon, a crowd of 50 to 60 gathered, as if they had all planned this meeting. Unsurprised to see one another present, they surrounded Puchi Shrine. That crowd wasn't just for show. Their bodies were hung with various spiritual tools, their hands and feet steady, very obviously skilled. Heavenly officials took spiritual power from the offerings of their worshippers, and some cultivators and monks could also receive spiritual power from the heavenly officials they worshipped. These monks and cultivators might even possess greater spiritual powers than Shelian, a heavenly official. To have so many come all of a sudden, it couldn't herald anything good. Shelian knitted his brows slightly, sensing that the newcomers didn't come in peace. Hua Cheng put down his bowl and chopsticks and rose to his feet. Shelian heard his humph in the private communication array. Old monks and foul cultivators dare chase me all the way here, he said. I'm sorry to have brought troubles to your door, Gogo. I'll go divert them away. Shelian grabbed him. Don't move, he said. Ling Wen was bewildered. What's going on? She asked. Shelian spoke to Hua Cheng through the private communication array. Don't go. Tell me honestly, is the reopening of Mount Tonglu really affecting you? No, Hua Cheng replied. Shelian stared at the eyes behind the bandages intently. Stop lying, he said. You're a supreme ghost king. You previously had no need to be afraid of mortals like them. Why wouldn't you just beat them down and chase them away directly, and would rather divert them away? You weren't playing a prank in changing to this form, am I right? With the reopening of Mount Tonglu, the stronger the ghost or demon, the more they felt the effects. The first time the ghosts were aroused, Shelian had witnessed with his own eyes just how much misery Hua Cheng suffered. And as the date to the reopening of the gates approached, the tremors would only grow. Under these circumstances, if it was Shelian himself, he would choose to temporarily seal his own true form and transform into a small creature, store his spiritual powers, and avoid going berserk, waiting for it all to be over before removing the seal. Thus, although this could avoid the torment of aggravation, because his powers were sealed, this gave others the opportunity to ambush him. Shelian cursed. Qirong, you. That night, Qirong had threatened that he was going to bring forth all the cultivators and monks that were aggrieved against Hua Cheng, but Shelian had thought that it was just a bluff. Hua Cheng shook his head lightly. Gogo, he said, they're only here for me. It'll be fine once I'm gone. Although, in my current form, I can't kill them with just a wave of my hand. I can at least still make them get lost. However, Shelian threatened, if you leave now, don't ever come back to see me again. Your Highness, Hua Cheng cried. Hua Cheng had always been carefree, but meticulously mindful. In the past, he had helped Shilian multiple times, and now that Shilian finally had the chance to help him, how could he possibly allow Huacheng to leave by himself? Shilian said darkly, "Sit down. I'll go meet with them." Chuan Yijin opened his eyes with great difficulty and asked, while in a daze, "Did someone come? Do you need me to beat them down?" His voice was hoarse. Shilian helped close his eyes. "Chi Ying, just keep lying there," he said. "Also, you can't beat mortals like that. It'll cost you merits." Shilian pressed himself against the wooden door to listen for any movement outside. Some villagers who had only finished their work for the day were still out and about and hadn't yet gone home for dinner, and were surprised to see so many cultivators and monks so suddenly. They asked, "What are all the masters doing gathering here? Are you all here for sheer Daozhang?" A monk filled with murderous intent clapped his hands together in prayer. Amitabha Buddha, dear donor, did you all know that this place has been invaded by wicked creatures? What? The villagers shouted in shock. Wicked creatures? What kind of wicked creatures? Another monk replied mysteriously, "A one-of-a-kind ghost king who brings chaos to the world." "What should we do?" the villagers exclaimed. The cultivator, dressed in luxurious robes, who was the first to arrive, said, "Leave it to us. Today, all of us who walk the same path are gathered here for this very reason, the chance of a lifetime to capture that evil thing." Then he was about to walk up when the village head pushed him back. That cultivator glared. "Who are you? What are you doing?" he asked. The village head said, "Masters, I'm the head of this village. We're very thankful you're all here, but to tell you the truth, you all look very expensive." That luxuriously dressed cultivator said, "We've come to defeat evil. Did you think we're here for rewards?" Then he was about to charge ahead again, but the villagers all stopped them again. The monks and cultivators were growing irritated, but they couldn't forcefully break people up either, so they impatiently demanded, "What now?" That village head rubbed his hands and said, "If it's free, then that's great. Thank you, masters, for coming here to defeat evil with benevolent hearts. But it's just that work here in this village is all taken care of by sheer Daozhang. It's hard on me as a village head if the masters are here to steal sheer Daozhang's work." The band of monks and cultivators looked at each other. "Sheer Daozhang?" they asked. Thus, they gathered round to discuss. Was there any well-known, capable cultivation house with the name Sheer in this trade? Doesn't seem like it. Either way, I've never heard of him. Probably some nobody. If we haven't heard of him, then he's not well known. Forget it. After their discussion, that luxuriously dressed cultivator turned back around. "The Sheer Daozhang that you speak of, is he the one living in this place?" The villagers answered, "Yeah." Then they shouted, "Sheer Daozhang! Sheer Daozhang! Your fellow tradesmen are here. There's so many of them. Are you home?" A yellow-robed old monk put his hands together in prayer. "Amitabha Buddha, it doesn't matter if that Sheer Daozhang isn't here. That wicked creature is hiding in this house right now." The villagers were stunned. "Huh?" they asked. Just then, Shilian pushed open the door and came out leisurely. "I'm here. What's going on, everyone?" he asked. The villagers immediately exclaimed, "Daozhang, these eminent monks and cultivators all say that in your house there's a ghost." Shilian smiled. "Eh, you can tell?" he asked. "What a fast admittance," they shouted. Shilian threw out the pot. "That's right. there really is a ghost. That luxuriously dressed cultivator caught the pot and was delighted at first, but when he opened it, his smile collapsed. A half maquillage woman? He asked. Then he tossed the pot back, looking very obviously displeased. Don't play pretend, my friend, he said. A vulgar monster like this can't even be considered a malice. You know exactly what we're referring to. Shilin caught the pot and felt that the strength of this man's throw wasn't weak. He was definitely someone who had cultivated arduously for years, and someone considerable. A number of monks said to the luxuriously dressed cultivator, Dao Xiong, this cultivator looks to be bursting with the essence of evil from his body. Could he maybe be? That luxuriously dressed cultivator said, whether he is or not, I, heaven's eye, can tell with but a look. Then he gave a loud shout, bit his finger, and drew a line on his forehead. A seeming third eye grew on his face. Seeing his skill, Shilin also praised mentally, and he leaned against the door, admiring his performance. That luxuriously dressed cultivator glared and stared at him intently for a moment. I knew it. There's essence of evil. Such a heavy essence of evil. Ghost King, you really did change face, after all. Shilin was stunned. How could he, an esteemed, titled, heavenly official, have essence of evil on him? He was just thinking that this man might have some skill, but how did he turn around and start spewing nonsense so quickly? Hearing him, the 50 to 60 masters in the gathering all looked like they were about to face a great enemy, and each of them struck their fighting stance. Hua Chang said to Shelian in the private communication array, those people are so annoying. It's fine, it's all right. You just sit, Shelian replied. A moment later, that luxuriously dressed cultivator spoke up again, but in a confused tone. That's not right, he said. The monks next to him asked, what's not right? The cultivator rubbed that blood mark on his forehead. This is weird. I'm looking at this man, but he's sometimes covered in the essence of evil, sometimes glowing with spiritual light, and sometimes dim and listless. This is really weird. Huh? How can that be? Dao Xiang, can you really do this? If you can't, let us handle this. Yeah, how can he be that strange? That luxuriously dressed cultivator said angrily, what, you think I can't do this? If I can't, you think you can? I, heaven's eye, have been running in the trade for so many years, and I've rarely gotten anything wrong. Shilin rubbed his forehead, shook his head, and asked gently, then why don't you take a look and tell me which part of me has the strongest essence of evil? Heaven's eye rubbed his forehead hard, and after looking again for a moment, he exclaimed firmly, your lip.